I put myself to sleep. I go upstairs and I start going to bed because, you know, I'm a little bit tipsy and stuff like that. And that's the best thing for me to do. I don't want to stay up really, really late. So it was, I think I left out that my son was there also. So my son was about 3 years old, my girlfriend, 2 of her nephews, and 1 of her nephew's friends. And at this time, my son was already sleeping. You know, he was pretty young. And so my girlfriend, her nephews, and the nephew's friend stayed downstairs. You know, they shut all the doors and they were just hanging out a little bit, you know. And so, you know, I just went to sleep, you know, and it's probably, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And so right around 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm woken up by some loud sounds. It sounds like, you know, someone was breaking into a car or breaking out a window outside. And so I woke up real quick and I rushed over to the window and I looked outside. And when I looked outside, you know, I saw like maybe 1 or 2 kids running around out in my driveway. And I think they're beating on the cars or something. And I heard a loud pounding on my door downstairs also. And I was like, what the hell is going on? So I ran downstairs and, you know, they're pounding on the front door really, really hard. And I ran downstairs to the front door and I went to look out the peephole, but when I put my face close to the door they just kicked the door open, like it just swung open real quick and it barely missed me. And I was like, what the? And that's all I could get out of my mouth is what the? And then they hit me over the head with the baseball bat. And I shook it off. And the first guy I seen, I punched him straight in his face. And that's all I could do. Like right after I punched that first guy in his face, they just all jumped on me and they just started beating me up. And they had baseball bats, you know, sticks, all kinds of stuff from my perspective. So there's not much I could do. So I could just cover up my face and block myself and stuff like that. And they just start beating me up like relentlessly. And so they get me on the ground and beat me up, and then I just black out, you know. I don't remember nothing. And then I start coming to myself and start waking up. And I was in the entryway when they were first beating me up, but now I'm in the kitchen, on the kitchen floor. And I'm waking up and I was just looking around like, oh. And I start standing up to my feet because there's no one around now, like everybody's gone. And I was just thinking like, what? And so I start getting to my feet and stuff like that, and I start walking towards the front door, and the front door is wide open still. And so I just start walking outside, you know, to see, you know, what's going on outside, because I heard some people talking out there. And so I start walking towards the driveway, and I come around the corner, and my girlfriend was out there talking to some cops, and some other people were out there, and they all turned and looked at me, and they're like, oh my God, you know, what are you doing? And I said, come on, let's go. Let's get in the car. Let's go after these guys or whatever. And the cop says, you're not going nowhere. They said the ambulance is on their way. They said, just go back inside. And they told my girlfriend, they says, take him back inside and lay him down on the couch and cover him up with a blanket. Try to keep him warm or something. You know, the ambulance is on their way. You guys don't need to try to drive your way down there. And so at this time I'm real confused because I'm thinking, well, why are they so shocked to see me out here, and why are they sending the ambulance? So all this stuff is processing through my head. And so I walked back towards my house, and as I'm walking in the front door, we had like a mirror set up right there in the entryway with a little table, and I see myself in the mirror. And when I see myself in the mirror, I'm covered with blood from like almost from like head to toe. I have marks all over me, blood all over my face, everywhere. And I'm just like, what? You know, and I start freaking out. I was like, dang. And my girlfriend comes right behind me. She says, come on, we gotta cover you up with the blanket. And so So I'm just listening to what she had to say. So she takes me in the living room, covers me up with a few blankets, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm sure at this point, you know, the blood I'm seeing is probably my blood, but I don't really know, you know, I'm in so much shock. And so while I'm sitting there covered up in these blankets, you know, I'm just kind of dazing in and out, like going to sleep and stuff like that. And my only worry, you know, that I had was I just want to get some rest, you know, I just want to get some rest. And so, you know, I was kind of passing out. Next thing you know, the ambulance comes in, and they bring a stretcher in, and they put me on the stretcher and everything like that, and haul me off to the hospital. Take me to the emergency room and everything like that. Well, you know, I had a few cuts in me. I was stabbed in my side, right here next to my lung, about 5 or 6 inches deep. And then I had a broken nose, you know. I think I had a couple broken fingers. I had bruises all over my face. I had a gash in my head. I had another stab wound in my back, but it was like where my spine was at. And I think they tried to stab me there, but hit some bone, so they chose another spot, and that's when they hit that sweet spot on my side. And so you know, I was just gathering all this together, like, what's going on, what's going on? Well, finally, my girlfriend started telling me the story. And at the same time she's telling me the story, I start having a little bit of flashback. But I only had one flashback period where I remembered something. When they were beating me up, I remembered one thing. When those guys were beating me up and they had me in the kitchen on the floor, I looked up, and from the kitchen, there's a stairway that goes upstairs. I looked up, and on the landing, my son was there, and he was only 3 years old. And I saw him, and he's all, "No, Daddy, Daddy, no, no." And I'm looking up at him, and I couldn't do nothing, and they're just beating me up. And her nephew runs around the corner and grabs my son and takes him upstairs. And that's the only flashback that I remember is of that vivid image right there. Well, while we're in the hospital and I'm getting stitched up and everything like that, and I finally come to it, and they have me in a room, you know, where my mom, my brother shows up, some of my girlfriend's family shows up, you know, they're all coming to see me because they heard of everything that happened. And she's telling the story, you know, to me and everybody else, and so I'm listening, I'm paying attention. And she said, like, she says that she was in the living room or something when they were banging on the door. And when it popped open, she let in our German Shepherd dogs, and our German Shepherd dogs ran in there. And she come around the corner and seen me. I was laying on the ground in the entryway, and she seen those guys just beating me up, you know, with sticks. She said they had a baseball bat. She said it looked like one of them had a gun. They had like 2x4s, 1x2s with nails driven through them, just everything, just going to town on me. And she just totally freaked out. So what she did was, one of the guys was beating me up with a baseball bat while I was on the ground, and while he swung back like this, she grabbed the bat out of his hand and just yanked it out of his hand. And then he turned around and looked like, what the hell? And she just cracked him across the face with it. And then again in his body a couple more times. And he took off running out the house. And, you know, when she let in the German Shepherd dogs, one of our oldest German Shepherd dog was a female. She ran up and jumped on another guy that was swinging on me with a stick. And she started biting him up and everything like that. So he dropped the stick and he freaked out and he took off. So there was 4 guys beating up on me with sticks and stuff like that. And so 2 guys already ran out the house. After the dog jumped on the second guy, she looks back and I'm already on the kitchen floor. And she looks, and I had a piece of the knife sticking out of my back. I guess, you know, the handle broke off of one of the knife blades, and the knife blade was stuck in me, but it was barely even shown. It was so deep in me. And that, she kind of got freaked out by that. So those guys were still beating me up, and she noticed that knife in my back, and her adrenaline started pumping out. And so we had a Miracle Blade set. and she went over and grabbed a fillet knife and pulled it out of there. And you know, one of the guys, she went towards him and she went to go stab him like that. She went to go stab this guy, and he put up his hand like this, and she ran that fillet knife straight through his hand and straight out the other end. And then she yanked it out, and he's all, ah. And then she was gonna go for another stab, you know, but her nephew says, no, you're gonna kill that guy, chill out. And then that guy's just holding his hand, and he takes off out the house too. And then so does the other guy. So at this point in time, you know, there's no more guys beating me up, you know, they all take off, you know, they all split out the house. While I'm laying there on the ground, her nephew sees that knife blade in my back, so he reaches down and he pulls out that knife blade, and then blood starts just squirting out or whatever. And she was even telling him, don't pull it out, but he pulled it out anyway. So that was her part of the story. And so, but I'm telling you what I seen from my perspective, and then her part of the story, you know, because she seen more than what I seen, and then I seen some stuff that she didn't see, you know. But right after she pulled out the knife blade, you know, I was laying on the ground, and I think that's when the cops were called and everything else. She didn't call the cops, our neighbors called the cops. The cops were already called, you know, when they were smashing windows out in the cars in our driveway. And so the story goes on, and you know, I'm in the hospital and I'm recuperating, and you know, she takes pictures of my face and everything like that, and I'm all beat up and everything. And I'm just like, well, it's a good thing I'm still alive, you know, that's a good thing, you know. And I never want to deal with anything like this again, because, hey, I'm just trying to work a job and raise my family and everything else, you know. I don't want to deal with this kind of stuff. And so we got to go meet up with the DAs and tell them our stories. They want to prosecute, and I says, well, you know, I kind of feel bad for these kids and stuff, because they were all young. Like the youngest one was like under 18, and then the one that stabbed me was 20, 21, and then two of the other guys were like 19 years old, you know. So I feel sorry for all these kids, you know, because as I look at the whole situation, you know, it kind of reminded me of myself when I was a young hoodlum getting into trouble and stuff like that. And I'm like, I feel sorry for them, because yeah, they done this crime towards me. You know, they broke in my house, beat me up, stabbed me, tried to kill me and everything. But I still feel sorry for them, because I know the consequence that they're going to have to face. I know what they're going to have to deal with, you know, and they're going to have to serve time in prison or something. It's not going to be no easy charge. But, and you know, and I started telling the prosecutor, you know, what about these kids? What if I want to drop charges, you know, and or just get them on probation or something like that? Because I know, you know, they're going to get prison time, and they're young kids, you know, they still got their whole life ahead of them. And the prosecutor told me, well, if you want to drop charges or whatever, it really doesn't matter, because the state will take over and they'll pursue full charges on these guys, you know, because they went totally against the law. So no matter what, they're going to get, you know, the penalty. They're going to get slammed with this charge. And so I was like, well, there's nothing I could really do. So I just left it at that. Well, they started producing newspapers with my story on the front cover, and I think it was on the news and a bunch of other stuff. Just like, you know, when our house was crashed into, it was on the news and everything like that. You know, it's a small town, they got nothing else to talk about, so we were in the newspapers. One of the first newspapers that come out was pretty much saying gang ties, a man gets stabbed, and all this and that. Well, after I read that first newspaper, I didn't like what they put in there. So we got a hold of the editor, you know, and talked to him. The editor, or whoever's in charge, the journalist. We got a hold of him, and, you know, we wanted him to rewrite that story, because there was no gang ties. I wasn't in a gang at the time, you know. I was totally trying to change my life, you know. I don't know if these other guys were in a gang, but they might have looked at it from an outside point of view and just said, well, this is what it is. It's a bunch of Mexican kids and gang ties and this and that. And I totally didn't like that. So we met with him and had him rewrite the article and go back and say what really happened. So they published like 3 or 4 newspapers on this whole deal, and we ended up going to court and everything. and it was sad. Court process, I think the only really big court hearing that we went to was the guy who stabbed me, because all of his friends were turning around and telling on him, putting all the blame on him, and he was pretty much taking the main fall. And so he was going up on his sentencing date, and this was going on for a few months. They had to compile all this stuff, go through all these hearings and everything. Well, when they sentenced him, they told him, they says, anything you got to say. And they brought me up on stand and asked me if there's anything I wanted to say and stuff like that. And he gets up and he says, I'm really sorry, please forgive me, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. And that all just really hit me in my heart, And I knew this kid was going to get some prison time, for what he did, but I didn't want it to happen to him, because I knew this kid, he has potential, he has his whole life ahead of him. He just made a bad mistake, and we all make mistakes in life. And so he said what he had to say, and then they asked me what I wanted to say, so I told him what I wanted to say. And I got up on the stand and I says, dude, I says, I totally forgive you for everything. And I says, but the thing I don't understand is, you weren't even coming there to fight with me. You were coming there to fight with my nephew's friend, But I was the one who was the first guy at the door, because it's my house, so I get the whole brunt of the whole deal. You guys stabbed me, beat me up and everything. Instead of just saying, hey, we're looking for so-and-so or whatever, you guys just come in with all this relentlessness and just beating up everybody. And I says, I'm not really mad about you guys beating me up, but the thing that kind of irritates me is, you guys pulled out knives and you guys tried to take my life, And I was like, you don't even know who I am, You have no idea who I am, and you didn't even have a beef with me. But since I own the house and that's where the guy was at, you guys chose just to beat me up and try to pretty much take my life, since I was the first guy you seen at the door. And and I don't think he could say anything, but I was just saying, that changed everything. If you guys would have came in to beat me up, who cares, But it changed everything when you pull out a knife and you stab someone and you try to take their life. And I didn't even call the cops. Like I said, my neighbor called the cops, and because they were making all this racket outside. And if my neighbor didn't call the cops, these guys probably never would have been caught, because I didn't even know who they were. I didn't know nothing about them, nothing. And I guess when they were evading the scene, they were in a car driving away from the scene from my house, and a cop was coming up because the cops were called. Well, the cop just decided to pull over this car because this car was speeding away from my house. Pulled over the car, and all these guys, they had my blood all over them. They had their own blood all over them. Everything, like 2 girls and 4 guys in the back of the car. So yeah, that's when they all got taken to jail, just because of their own what they did, And so after I had to say what I had to say, the judge comes out, and he's wanting to sentence these guys and stuff like that. So the guy who sentenced me, he gave him a charge, and he says, well, we got 2 charges that are going to run consecutive on this guy. The first charge is 12 to 20 years, and the second charge is like, I think 6 to 10 or something like that. So, and end up being like a 22 to 30 year sentence on this kid. And I was just like, man, I really feel sorry for this kid. And his mom was there and everything. And when his mom found out that he got that sentence, she got pissed off and she wanted to fight my girlfriend and angry with me. And it's just like, we didn't do this. Your son did it, I don't even know who he is. He broke in someone's house, beat me up, and tried to stab me and take my life. And you're looking at it like, we did it. But that's just kind of like the ignorance with some people nowadays. They don't look at stuff and just be like, hey, this is our fault or whatever. They just look at, well, it's totally their fault, So, but stick with me. We're going to come back and tell the rest of the story. There's a lot of stuff to tell. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe down below. and hit the bell icon. Stick with me. We got a lot of stuff coming out, and stay around, man. Hear my story. See you later.